Welcome to Coaching Conversations with Margo Myers. This podcast is produced by Shipley Coaching, where discovery inspires growth.
Hi, I'm Margo Myers, an executive and leadership coach, and I help people become more effective in their roles, whether it's leadership, communication, or career success. In this podcast, we are talking everything coaching. Coaching is all about maximizing your potential to achieve your goals. And if you've ever known what it is you want to achieve and you don't have an exact plan to get there and stay committed to your goal, coaching may be for you or your organization. Our topic in this episode is emotional intelligence and how important it is as people are asked to do more in rapidly changing, ever-expanding environments. Joining me today is transformational life and leadership coach Michael Bianco-Splann. Michael has 3 decades of executive coaching, training, and performance consulting in several industries, most recently in the financial services industry, leading retail banking. He is a certified coach, an accomplished speaker, and the author of 2 books, including Conscious Leadership, 7 Principles That Will Change Your Business and Change Your Life, and also Dying to Live, a tapestry of reinvention. So thanks for joining me, Michael. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to talk to you about emotional intelligence. And let's just start out with the basics here. How do you define emotional intelligence?
Well, first of all, Margo, it's great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this important topic. Emotional intelligence. I cut my teeth on emotional intelligence with Daniel Goleman's book that came out in 1995, in which he basically took on the concept that emotional intelligence is actually more critical to one's success than what we've traditionally looked at in terms of IQ. Emotional intelligence, according to Daniel Goleman, which I attend to and I subscribe to, is really broken into 4 parts. First part being self-awareness, second part being self-regulation or self-monitoring, the next one being social awareness, and then there's social skills attached to this. Emotional awareness and intelligence has everything to do with understanding our own emotions. And we're all human beings, and by the fact that we're a human being, we have emotions, and we experience those emotions. It's being able to be aware when we're experiencing those emotions to be able to regulate ourselves in any given situation. And as you mentioned in the opening here about the digital world that we live in, the virtual world, the world that's heating up and rapidly expanding faster than we can even keep our feet on the ground here, the importance of being able to connect with people in a powerful way, particularly from a leadership point of view, but also from a coaching point of view, really becomes critical. So emotional intelligence is our ability to monitor ourselves, be able to regulate our emotions to optimize a situation, and then being able to look at the collective and more of a social awareness. One of the key attributes of social awareness is empathy, being able to recognize other people's emotions. So all of the emotional intelligence has everything to do with being aware and optimizing our experience, both personally as well as professionally.
How does emotional intelligence, how do you see it showing up in the workplace? I think we've all worked for bosses who maybe didn't have very high emotional intelligence. I mean, I've worked for the yellers and the screamers and people who just were simply unable to manage and self-regulate their emotions. But beyond that, how do you see it showing up in the workplace?
Well, we're in a real major paradigm shift when it comes to, and this has been taking place over the last 20 years, in terms of rote management, or what I look at as antiquated management style, and effective leadership. And effective leadership in today's world, this rapidly expanding digitally based world, really becomes critically important. And in order for us as leaders and as professional coaches to really operate within this construct, we need to be able to maximize our time, our energy, our efficiencies to be able to deal with much, much more. I remember when I started in the professional world back in the early 80s, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't even have fax machines, we didn't have scanners, we didn't have all of the technology that exists today. And we were pretty busy back then. Today, I have 2 cell phones, multiple computers. So I'm getting, as I'm working in my day, and I'm sure you can attest to this, Margo, as well. And working in my day, I'm getting emails that are sent to multiple email addresses, which is then, tripling my workload. So emotional intelligence becomes really the filter and the catalyst for maximizing the work that we do as leaders in the professional world, but also as human beings. Our lives are not becoming less busy, less frenetic. Our lives are becoming much more challenging as we go forward here. So being able to navigate the intricacies and the complexities in a changing world really demands that we be able to monitor ourselves, monitor our emotions to be able to really optimize our responses, particularly in the business world. As leaders are being called now to do many, many things. Your capacity, your workload is expanding. So being able to handle all the intricacies of the workloads that leaders have really demands that they have emotional intelligence to be able to do that.
Well, and I think the other thing that I notice in the workplace too, especially for leaders, is they are being asked to manage uh, people from a number of different generations. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got everything from, millennials have now outpaced
Mhm.
boomers in the
Yes.
workplace, and you got the Gen X and the Gen Z and all
Yeah.
the other, ones that are coming up now. So I see emotional intelligence as being for leaders really important to be able to work with all these different generations that we're encountering in the workplace as well.
Mhm.
How do you
Yeah, yeah.
see that showing
Well,
up?
let's just talk about the first part of this in terms of self-awareness. And you're absolutely correct. As a baby boomer, which I am, I have in my professional life had to deal with the multiple generations. As I get older, the generations increase, and the changes and the nuances with each generation take shape. You can talk to a baby boomer in any industry across the gamut, and they will give you horror stories about how to deal with millennials. And there are certain techniques and tactics available to that. Let's talk about self-awareness for a second. We, as human beings, just by the fact that we're a human being, are biased, right? So we have both explicit as well as implicit bias. We are the product of our DNA, congenital DNA, in terms of the parents that we have, the grandparents, and the lineage that we carry forward in our DNA, but we're also part of the environment. We are a construct with DNA as well as the nurture side of things in terms of environment. Environment being our family history, our heritage, our ethnicity, our educational level, where we live. All of these factors play into the belief systems that we hold on to, like we have a ball and chain attached to our belief systems. So emotional intelligence, the first part of that is being able to recognize that we have these biases, both explicit, conscious, as well as unconscious, how they play out in our world, and be able to recognize when they're coming forward. So when I have an emotional reaction, my emotional reaction is filtered through my biases, through who I am on the internal side. And if I'm dealing with someone as a professional coach, there's times when I'm dealing with people that are completely different than I am, have completely different, diametrically opposed belief systems. If I let that get in the way of my ability to remain neutral and confidential and sensitive and trusting with the person that I'm coaching, then I'm not effective in what I'm doing. So it really becomes critically important that we understand that we are human, and as a human being, we have the biases and the belief systems that we carry forward and how they play out in our world, both professionally as well as personally. So it really is a quality that threads all parts of our lives, both professionally as well as personally. And in raising your ability to have emotional intelligence, operating on that construct, that more of a present awareness that leaders are really demanded of it today, really will improve one's ability to connect viscerally with the people around us. And to your point, multiple generations. The truth is human beings want to be able to connect. And if I am not aware of my emotional boundaries or my emotional jags that I have, then it's going to act out. It's going to play out in the way in which I operate in the world, many times unconsciously. And so it's bringing the unconscious behaviors that are creating mistakes or creating nuisance in my life, my professional life, and being able to recalibrate them. So yes, it just Emotional intelligence touches all aspects of leadership and all aspects of our lives and our personal lives as well.
Let's talk a little bit about self-regulation.
Yeah.
And, once we become aware of our biases and our triggers and how we respond to that, let's talk about managing our emotions. And do you have any tips or processes that you do as a coach to help people regulate their emotions?
Yeah, I mean, there's some real quick tips that have worked. They continue to work very well for me, and I use them all the time. One of them is, first of all, you have to be aware that you're having an emotional reaction. That's the first thing. That's where self-awareness comes in. Once you realize that emotions you're experiencing, and there's a lot of ways to know that, particularly the hot emotions: anger, resentment, rage, sadness. I mean, there's all a bunch of very hot emotions. Physiologically, we are body, mind, and spirit. So physiologically, when we're having an emotional reaction, if it's a really big one, usually the amygdala is kicking in. Next thing you know, we're dinosaurs and reptilians, and we're either going to fight, run or freeze, and we're going to act like that. So realizing, number one, that we're having the emotional reaction. Once you do that, and this happens very quickly, once you build in the practices, I'm having an emotional reaction, what do I do? So for me, I take 2 or 3 intentional deep breaths in the moment, even when I'm interacting with the person in front of me, albeit from a leadership point of view or a coaching point of view. When I'm having an emotional reaction, I will take intentional, deep, slow breaths, and immediately my physiology will reduce, my heart rate will come down, my heart and my breathing will start to syncopate, and the neocortex kicks in, and that it helps me to be more rational, more objective, and more present with the person in front of me. So it doesn't, my emotions don't mug me. And that's what happens when people react as opposed to responding. Responding is what you're talking about in terms of self-regulation. Reacting is when I'm having an emotional reaction and boom, I react. And we see that happen all the time. Self-regulation is I'm having an emotional reaction, I stop, I catch myself, I take a couple deep breaths, I recalibrate very quickly. This happens in a matter of seconds. And then I'm more neutral, more objective to be able to go forward and actually be present with the person that I'm interacting with. And by the way, when you do that, the person or the people that you're dealing with will experience you like that. Your energy changes. And the energy that flows from you, both from verbal as well as your nonverbal energy, changes. And the frequency lifts up, and the connection is better, and it's much more attractive. So self-regulation, the second part of emotional intelligence, is absolutely critical to being able to forward yourself and be able to progress in the work that you're trying to accomplish, particularly with people that you don't necessarily agree with. And that happens all the time. We don't always agree with the people that we're leading or the people that we're coaching. It doesn't happen like that.
And it's almost, recognizing that you're having that reaction. And then if you can pause, people underestimate how important breathing can be, and taking that deep breath and stopping. And what you pointed out there too is it's almost like the air going out of a balloon, right? Yeah. And so the other person, if the first person lets down, the other person can kind of let down too. And it does change the dynamic almost immediately.
Yeah, that's right. And let's just capitalize on this a little bit further and take it to the social awareness part, right? So we're talking about self-regulation and the power and some of the tips and tactics around reducing that anger or those emotions that are hot. The real power in your social awareness and the one skill or attribute that's most powerful is empathy. People that are empathic. That doesn't mean that you agree with someone. Being empathetic towards someone is not that you agree with them. What it means is that you understand the emotion that they're experiencing. And particularly in hot emotions, when you're dealing with someone who's angry or upset in some way, when you express yourself successfully in an empathetic fashion, it's like throwing cold water on a fire. You immediately will reduce the heat attached to the emotion and be able to bring someone back into fold. So these techniques, these tactics that we're talking about, these skills that are part of the overarching emotional intelligence are very, very successful for people when they're employed properly. So, social awareness is about the collective, about how we interact with the people around us as opposed to ourselves. But you're not going to be able to, you can't deal effectively with the collective and others unless you're really dealing with yourself effectively. In my book, Conscious Leadership, I talk about this in the second principle, which is to be a peace builder, to quell the fires within, because we all have fires within, and those manifest in lots of different ways. So for me to be an effective leader, an effective coach, an effective husband, friend, whatever it might be, being able to understand those fires that exist within me that play out in the way that I operate in the world is really important. So again, it's about making sure that I'm dealing with myself first to be able to then deal more effectively with the folks that I'm dealing with, the collective or the social awareness part of that.
Let's talk too about, the social skills that you mentioned. A lot of times people refer to social skills as soft skills, and I've seen a lot of just your people skills. I've seen a lot of people say, no, these are vital skills that we need to master, or at least have pretty good idea of, reading other people and just how we show up with other people, right? Talk a little bit about that, Michael.
I tend to look at people from a variety of different vantage points. And, there are people that are process oriented, methodology oriented, more analytical in the way that they approach the world. And then there's the people side, right? So when we talk about soft skills, oftentimes we're talking about people skills in the business community, right? And those people skills are in many companies, in many industries, are secondary or tertiary in terms of learning experience. How do you learn to be an effective leader when it comes to the dynamic of empathy, for instance? How do you learn skills of communicating with impact, or being able to read other people's emotions or nonverbals, right? This is where businesses really fall short in terms of their because where do you get this unless you have great parents or
Exactly.
a teacher or some mentor in your life? How do you pick this up? You're not picking it up watching television. You're not picking it up watching the political leaders that we have in our country. You're not picking this up looking at the business community in terms of the way corporations run at this point. How do we learn these what we call soft skills or people skills? This is where professional coaches come in, right? So we, in the work that I do as a professional coach, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, we spend a lot of energy and time around leadership skills that are really driven towards what you just talked about: soft skills, people skills, how you connect with another human being, how do you resolve conflict, how do you communicate with impact. Those are not skills that are they're not taught in school, they're not necessarily taught in the home. So where do you learn those? You learn those by having a great coach. You learn those by working for organizations that really support soft skills, leadership skills. And so emotional intelligence, I would think, in all companies, just ubiquitous across the gamut, that would be an important part of the learning process for employees. So organizations that support emotional intelligence, train their folks, live by the values attached to that level of skill, are companies that are generally more successful, and leaders who are more successful.
And also in this economy right now too, businesses who do that and who develop their people and grow their leadership skills and their people skills and their emotional intelligence, they also retain their better employees. It's no longer really a perk. I mean, I think it's a necessity at this point where we are, especially in the economy.
Margo, absolutely, it's a necessity. Why do people leave organizations? You just look at any HR survey out there, they'll tell you the 1, 2, and number 3 answers have everything to do with your boss. Mm-hmm. My boss doesn't care about me. My boss doesn't give me feedback, both constructive as well as positive. My boss doesn't develop me. My boss is not interested in me. So again, to your point, it costs organizations anywhere from 5 to 10 times more to bring on new employees. What's the cost to the company? What's the cost to the employees and to your customers? So there's a real practical, pragmatic impact of really having emotional intelligence, as an example, as a core critical skill within your organization. And, from a dollars and cents point of view, from a customer satisfaction point of view, from an employee satisfaction point of view, from a work-life balance perspective, all of that is affected by how well we as leaders are able to bring forward these types of skills.
Absolutely. Do you have a story that you could share with us briefly about maybe, an example of someone that you've worked with that they were able to develop their emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I could share a story. I worked recently with a coachee who really high performing leader, but was thought by others as being a bulldog, really kind of like harsh and like, just direct and like really great leader. But their way in which they were approaching the people that they were leading and serving was harsh and
Kind of abrupt.
not very, yeah. And so working with this person over a course of several months, we identified areas within the person's work and people and examples that were pet peeves, or they were sparks for this person to actually be like the bulldog. And we recalibrated that using the techniques and the formula around emotional intelligence to really help this person be more aware of their emotions, number one. And again, when they're aware of their emotions, being able to stop, pause, in this case, breathe, and think through in a matter of seconds how best to optimize, and that's the self-regulation part of it. And over the course and the practice over several months, this person was able to really change the way in which they were dealing with people. They were received very differently, and they continued to improve in their workflow and be able to deal with people. As a matter of fact, this person is actually looking to get promoted at this point. So a big turnaround. And what if you weren't watching, you may not have seen it. And yet, as a coach, as a professional coach, that's what we do. We look, we observe, we draw analysis, we ask questions, we prod, we dig a little deeper. And really, that was quite a success story. The person really made a big turnaround as a result of just being able to recognize their emotions and then self-regulate in a different way. Deal with conflict differently. Yeah.
That's awesome. There's a billboard that I notice on my way to work, and it says, "People change, but we forget to tell everyone." And I love that because it's so true. And people learn, they grow, they evolve.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, we do need to pay attention when people are changing and evolving, because we do progress. And sometimes we don't always give the people around us credit for that. So
That's correct. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So do you have if there's one final thought that you would like to leave us with today regarding emotional intelligence, what would that be?
Well, in the work that I do, both as a professional coach, but also as a writer and a speaker and working with my private clients, one of the mantras that I have is to turn off the autopilot. And so I would leave with the folks that are watching this podcast and listening to this. I would tell folks to just turn off your autopilot. We as human beings make thousands of choices and decisions every day, and most of which is unconsciously done. We walk through our lives doing the same things we do every day, getting the same results, and at the end of the day, in many cases, saying, "Oh my God, I didn't get anything accomplished today." So my point here is turn off the autopilot and step into presence, step into a level of awareness. When you become aware of being aware, you step into consciousness. And when you step into consciousness, you have an opportunity to make different decisions, some of which can really be life-filling decisions that support you, but also support the people that you lead and serve. So if I'm leaving one little mantra, little nugget here, it's just turn that autopilot off and step into a level of awareness and presence.
Yeah, I love that because it's so true. We are creatures of habit, and so we do need to turn off the autopilot.
In a changing world, Margo, it's a changing world. If we're not constantly redefining ourselves, stepping into the better self that, was not there a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, then we're not advancing. And I don't know about you, but I'm not done. And I'm continuing to learn, and I'm continuing to try to expand myself. And I'm working with people that want to do that as well. And that's just cool
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yep. Be a lifelong learner, and I know you are one too. So let us know, Michael, where we can find more information about your books and some of the speaking that you do.
Well, first of all, my books are on Amazon, so please go out on Amazon. You can pull it up under Michael Bianco-Splann or on the titles of the book. You
Okay.
mentioned Conscious Leadership, 7 Principles That Will Change Your Business, Change Your Life. And my most recent book is Dying to Live, A Tapestry of Reinvention. For folks who want to find out more about me, please go to my website, which is iamleadership.co, C-O, not com, .co. So it's iamleadership.co, and you will get a real expansive view in terms of what I offer in terms of my speaking, my consulting, as well as my books. And I have several articles out there that have been recently published in online magazines. And a host of things. I also would encourage folks to go on LinkedIn. I have a very active profile on LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. And you can pull me up under Michael Bianco-Splann. And I'd love to have folks reach out to me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I have the feeling that this is a conversation that we can continue and come back and revisit at some point.
I'll look forward to it, Margo. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. We hope that you will join us for our next episode of Coaching Conversations with Margo Myers. And don't forget to check out the Shipley Coaching website at shipleycoaching.com. You'll find articles, links to podcasts, and you can learn more about our programs, including our ACTP course for coach certification. And you can also learn about partnering with us for our leadership engagement course. We're here to share discovery that inspires growth.